I think for me, personally, these 25 years have been certainly the best part of my professional life. But I think even more for me personally, they've been a blessing. When I came here, I had an unusual array of experiences. I had already been an elementary or high school principal for 21 years. I had chaired a diocesan task force on reorganizing education. I had opened and closed schools, built buildings and torn them down and remodeled them. I was already speaking nationally. I had a newspaper column. So I came with a lot of educational background. But I would say that I had to grow up personally, and as a Catholic, I was part of that generation that kind of separated your professional life from your personal life. And these 25 years here, and especially my experience with stewardship as a way of life, I've grown so much personally and in my relationships and in my ability to be respectful to people in their relationships, that maybe on that side it's caught up with the professional side. And so I really can't thank the Diocese of Wichita enough for the opportunity that's been provided to me. For my family, it's a blessing. It's enabled me to give my 6 children the best Catholic education possible in this country. In many other places, we may not have been able to afford Catholic schools. All 6 of my kids graduated from Catholic colleges. The 5 that are married, married Catholic school graduates, college graduates. They're in love with their faith. My wife sometimes says we are lucky in that our kids are making us holy. Our kids are so much further along in their faith than they're bringing us with them. We owe that here. I think I owe the diocese, because I know that as I leave, I'm leaving with a national reputation. I've known around the country and even overseas some, and that would not have been possible if I hadn't been part of something very special here. I tend not to think that those things are a result of any great skill or talent that I have. I sometimes think I just got on the nose of a rocket, and the rocket was called the Diocese of Wichita, and it took off and took me with it. So as I look back at 25 years, that's really my reaction. Just gratitude for everything I've had the opportunity to be a part of. I want to start that answer by saying that I think the person who deserves much more credit than he's ever given is Bishop Gerber. Monsignor Magritte, of course, was the master practitioner par excellence. He put it into practice and made it work and could show other people how to make it work. But it was really Bishop Gerber that developed the philosophy and the theology of stewardship, and was responsible for the American Bishop's Pastoral Letter on stewardship with Archbishop Murphy. And he really was the one who took the guts of our operation here as a diocese and showed how to make it consistent with stewardship in every aspect. So, for instance, the Catholic Advance became free because that was part of belonging to the diocese. our offices were all tied in some way to stewardship and implementing it. The longer I'm here, the more I admire Bishop Gerber for what he did. And my role in it was really, I was given a national audience to articulate it, and so my name got attached to it, but really I just came along and followed. I articulated maybe. Stewardship is, I think, fundamental to everything we do in this diocese, and particularly the schools. In some ways, the schools were a cause of the diocese moving to stewardship, and of course, in the 30 years since, they've been the great beneficiary of it. And I think you have to look at that both ways. When Bishop Gerber carried out, people gathered in the middle 80s to try to understand what the people wanted. They told him they wanted their parishes and they wanted Catholic education. And so as he studied what Monsignor Magritte had done, and as he reflected as only he does, his response was to say we should make stewardship a way of life for the entire diocese. Now there's a misnomer out there that he somehow told the parishes they had to do away with tuition. And he never did that. He never forced anyone to give up tuition. He just said, if you make that change, you cannot go back. You cannot do that to the people. When I became superintendent in 1993, about 3/4 of the schools had done away with tuition, and about 8 or 9 were still charging tuition. 2 of the high schools, 6 or 7 of the grade schools. We worked with them individually. The last one to give up stewardship was a parish you probably have heard of, Chris, St. Andrew and Independence. And that was in January of 2002. So for the last 16 years, we have not had parent-paid tuition in our diocese. The parishes have accepted that as part of their mission. That's had a profound impact on the schools, primarily, of course, in enrollment. If we didn't have stewardship, instead of 10,500 students, we would have 5,000 or 6,000 students. We would have a lot fewer schools, and the schools would be very different. When I came to the diocese in 1993, the focus in the schools was very academic. They were going through a project that they had started in the middle 80s that focused on writing curriculum and systematically teaching it and measuring whether you were effective. It's a good project. I shifted that. What makes Catholic schools unique is not how you teach subjects. It's that it starts with not the relationship between the teacher and the learner. It starts with the relationship between God and the individual. And so in the stewardship world, we believe that the academic gifts that you have are a gift from God. And you don't develop them so that you get a better job or make more money or become popular or get awards. You develop your talents because you owe it to God to be the best you can be. And so my particular contribution, if it were, was to say, let's move that shift from academic to a Catholic culture that insists that schools exist because God has a plan for each individual, and the purpose of a school is to help that individual discover what God wants for them. And of course, that played out in an overflow of vocations. So we went, I think when I came, we had about 15 seminarians. Does that sound about right? And now we've been as high as 55 or somewhere around there. And whereas very few of our seminarians used to be graduates of Catholic schools, now we have 40 or 50 in Catholic schools. So the schools owe their success to stewardship, but stewardship would not have been successful in this diocese if you didn't have the Catholic school as a way for the parish to focus its mission on something other than let's just fix up our buildings and buy nice things. So that's the power, I think, of stewardship. Well, of course, I'm not unbiased. I'm not unbiased. I think there's a real challenge for this diocese, and it's starting to hit us in the face. Catholic schools require tremendous sacrifices. And if each generation is not willing to sacrifice, you lose. We saw that in the 60s and early 70s when people blinked and Catholic schools closed. We see it around the country. Every Monday I get a newsletter that tells me how many schools are closing at the end of this school year. I think we're going to see something on the order of 150 across the country. I've been fortunate. I haven't had to close a single school in the city of Wichita in my 25 years. And we have more inner city schools than we ever had. So to me, the challenge is, are you willing to make the sacrifices? Yes, the costs are there, and they're a burden on a parish. The demographics have changed dramatically. Where at one time the city was more or less spread out in its economic ability, today you have poverty concentrated in the central corridor and wealth on the east and west suburbs. We have to understand, and Bishop Jacobs did such a wonderful job of saying you have to act now for the future. And so yes, the Hispanic community cannot fund Catholic education by themselves right now. But if we don't provide Catholic education for them, then instead of 120,000 Catholics, in 25 years you'll have 75,000 here. And so to me, we have to deal with these issues. We've in some places compromised stewardship with fundraising. Your newspaper is just full of fundraising activities every week, every 2 weeks. We compromise it by saying to the parents, if you don't give this much, or if your grades aren't as good as they should be. I'm not sure in some parishes if I would have been allowed to go to Catholic school as a kid, because I was young, I skipped a grade in school, I was immature, I didn't always get good grades. I might not have been allowed to be in Catholic school. So I think we have to be careful that we don't compromise the purity of stewardship. And I think we also have the challenge in this diocese, maybe in the Midwest. Monsignor Hamburger called it rugged individualism, but I would call it congregationalism, where sometimes a parish will act as though it has no obligation to the wider church. And it takes actions which then cause problems for the rest of the church. In the Catholic schools, one of our core principles is the principle of unity. We are one diocese, one bishop, and nothing we do can take away from the unity of the diocese. We have some tendencies in our diocese to veer away from that, whether it's because of distance in rural Kansas, or here in the city because of the personalities of some of the parish leadership. But it's as if in my parish we don't have to do what the diocese does. And I think in the long run that is going to have to get counteracted. Those are the challenges. If the people of this diocese and its leaders are not willing to sacrifice for Catholic schools, you will see fewer vocations, fewer people attending Mass, and declining contributions to the parish. We've seen it all over the country. Wherever people close their schools, there's a decline in the church. It isn't that schools by themselves are so wonderful. We're educating children, and we hope that the high percentage of those children are going to stay in the church, and research says that more than 2/3 of them will. But really, with a Catholic school, you have the whole family involved, and you have the whole parish involved. And the perfect example would be St. Joe's Oast. A parish of 125 families is operating a Catholic school with 180 kids. It's a miracle. It's a living miracle, because those people believe in the importance of Catholic education, not only for themselves. Half their kids come from the other parishes. It's what they mean for Andale, and for Garden Plain, and for Mount Vernon, and for Waterloo. There's a power to that little school. To me, that's the biggest challenge we face, is that we are willing to make the sacrifices for the next generation of Catholics who will lead the church. Let me just talk a little bit about what I've seen as the changes over the last 25 years in Catholic education. They may seem small if you're not an educator, maybe, but I think most people will kind of see them. As I said, when I came, there was a focus on academic, and we had to reorient it to the idea that in Catholic schools, the moral purpose comes before the academic purpose. If you don't teach a person what's right and wrong, it doesn't matter what else you learn, because you won't know how to use it right. There's been a profound shift in our schools to a Catholic culture that permeates everything they do, and you see it in the lives of the people who work there. I've hired 168 principals in my 25 years. Out of those 168, there have been only 4 divorces. That's a remarkable percentage. And it tells you something about the quality of the people who lead these schools. I get tickled when people say Catholic schools are so Catholic in this diocese. And I say to them, we have 38 schools and there are 38 lay people running them. We're down to 12 sisters teaching in our schools. So when you say we're Catholic, you're saying that our lay people who work in our Catholic schools are remarkable for transmitting the Catholic faith to what we do. The other shift that had to take place, which maybe was the most painful for me personally, was to move the high schools from the idea of being elite prep institutions to schools that were primarily Catholic, serving the entire Catholic community. And in my mind, as a result, actually prepare more kids for college than they ever did. When I started in the diocese, there were about 1,500 students in our Catholic high schools. Today there are 2,500. We've increased Catholic school enrollment by 60%. And we're turning out tremendous young people. We've gone from being really good prep institutions to being the best Catholic high schools in the United States. And people all over the country study what these 4 schools are doing. That's been, I think, a big shift. The other shift we made, which is maybe not so noticeable, was that in 1993, this diocese, this school system was very centralized. The school office ran the whole academic program. They ran this. And what we tried to shift it to was what Bishop Jacobs called a unified system of parish schools. So the power, if that's what it is in the parishes, but we're unified as one diocese with a common mission. And that, I think, is powerful, and it's also unique in the United States. We're the only diocese in the country that funds its Catholic high schools directly from the diocese via the parishes. So the parishes provide the funds here, and then we fund the high schools. It means we're more economical. The cost of our high schools is about half of what other high schools are. But it also means we can control the mission. And so the mission does not become win the state football championship or how many National Merit Scholars do you have, although we'll take all those. But it really is, the mission is always to form these kids in faith. That's been a big shift. As a result, some of the things you see, we like to say every Catholic school is Catholic, but in our diocese we're Catholic first. We're Catholic every place, we're Catholic all the time. You see our high schools open to all. We did away with entrance tests. Every Catholic kid who is approved by his pastor can attend a Catholic high school. That's unique to the Diocese of Wichita. We've moved with our teachers from what I would call union pay, scales, to merit pay. So our best teachers get the best salaries. And we also have substantially upgraded their retirement, their health insurance programs, the percentage that's paid for. You've benefited from that. We've raised the percentage. The longer you're in the diocese, the more of the premium we pay. We've added portability. We were one of the first dioceses in the country to provide portability so that if you came from another diocese, you could bring that experience with you. The work we've done with special needs, which has been a blessing in two ways. One, we're serving a whole population that we weren't serving before. That's changed dramatically. I think in the 90s we were talking about learning disabilities and attention deficit disorder. Today we're talking a lot more about autism spectrum and mental illness. But because of the need to try to serve kids, two things happened. One, we were able to get a law through the legislature that said every child in the state is entitled to special services regardless of where they go to school. So the public schools are providing the same service to our kids they provide to their own. The second thing is it made us better teachers of all of our other kids. We learned to individualize, to differentiate. We no longer say, I teach a class of 25. We say, I teach 25 individual children, each with their own gifts and needs and plans. That's a big change. Of course, I'll be forever known for the Drexel Fund and my involvement in starting it. This demographic shift in the diocese, where we now have 1,200 children in the schools who go home and don't speak English at night. And then, as a result, we're providing between $1.5 million and $2 million a year back to the parishes that have high concentration of low-income children. That's a profound shift in our diocese, and it's making all of us better. We're so proud that we're able to help each other. You can remember, because you've been here as long as I have, that we used to talk about, and Bishop Gerber would say, you have to take stewardship beyond your parish boundaries or it's not stewardship. The Drexel Fund has made us go beyond our boundaries, and we're proud that we as a diocese can provide the education for so many more kids because of what's happened with the Drexel Fund. Our school children just finished raising for the 4th straight year over $100,000 themselves for walk-in sister shoes. That's a phenomenal story. Certainly enrollment has increased. We've gone from about 8,800 to about 10,500 students at a time when the rest of the country has lost about 40% of its enrollment. That's a real credit to the people of the diocese. We have new schools at Holy Spirit, in Goddard, at St. Catherine's in Siena, at St. Joe Ost, and we've kept all our other schools open. And as I said, what I see as my legacy will be the quality of the leadership in our schools. I couldn't be more proud of our principals, and their faith and their commitment and their sacrifices. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my pride in the Catholic schools of our diocese and talk a little bit about my tiny little role in it. As I said, I feel like I got on the nose of a rocket and was able to be a part of some great success and maybe helped articulate it a little bit. But I will be grateful to my dying day for every opportunity I've had here. Thank you.